Hmm. I'm wondering how many people we're going to get at this meeting. I know that the Huawei guys are probably watching soccer. Paul is going to be a little bit late, and I don't actually see anything on the agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants to talk about? No. Maybe we'll wait a few more minutes and see if anybody else joins or if anybody comes up with something they want to talk about. But if we don't have any agenda, and
Amara,
I'm not sure. Go ahead.
can you hear?
Yeah.
Amara, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can hear me?
Yeah, this is going from IBM, and I'm new to this product, and because I'm currently working for the multi-cluster support for service mesh in East community, and this service mesh also highly depend on the multi-cluster in Kubernetes. So yeah, so I'm not trying to contribute some products to this. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I wasn't really clear whether it was specifically federation or just multi-cluster in general that you were interested in integrating with.
Yeah, I think that my focus will be multi-cluster.
Okay. Is there any documentation or is there anything you can point folks in the SIG at so they can sort of educate themselves as to what Istio's plan for multi-cluster is, or?
Oh.
I mean, we've had presentations from folks before, but there wasn't necessarily, that I recall, specific details about integration plans, more just ideas about, say, cross-cluster, like app connectivity, that sort of thing.
All right, so you mean that you want to get some detail for how does Istio use multi-cluster?
Yeah, I mean, you've posted some issues that suggest that you're looking for specific capabilities that aren't necessarily in line with federation. It may be that it's more of a multi-cluster thing. Like the two issues in mind are like the idea of federate node or federate like pod visibility.
Right. I see. Yeah. Because currently I'm not only working for the service mesh cross multi-cluster, but I'm also working for the multi-cluster support for the Kubernetes. So we have two requirements. So the first one is that we want to make the multi-cluster support to manage the resources, to manage the Kubernetes resources. And another one is that we want to leverage the Istio to manage all the applications running on top of Kubernetes. So my requirements for the federate node and federate port is actually the requirement for the resource management for the clusters, because there are some customers want to have an overview of all the resources that they manage across different clusters. So this is actually a requirement that they want only one entry point to view all the resources from different SaaS.
Right. So I should say that I'm not sure that federation is necessarily a good fit directly. Like the idea of pods, like pods and nodes are explicitly not supported in federation. Like that's by design, not by accident. And it's not that there wouldn't be the potential for adding kind of like an aggregation layer on top that would collect data about underlying clusters and allow it to be viewed through like a single pane of glass, that sort of thing. But federation is really designed to be a central point for propagating configuration down to clusters. And while there is, I'm not sure if there's issues for it. I think there is. There are plans to consider different mechanisms for reporting and aggregating status of underlying clusters. It's not strictly like a federation capability. It could very well be something that is implemented and so that it can be deployed separately from federation. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, Mara, so I'm sorry. So can you please show more detail for what is the difference between federation and multi-cluster? So based in my understanding, I think that they are the same thing.
Well, multi-cluster is kind of like a very broad sort of problem space that basically involves any problem of coordination across multiple clusters. Federation is a more specific special case in which the goal is to provide a way to define configuration that you want to be common, largely common across clusters, and mechanisms for scheduling things into different clusters. But it's basically a subset. And the reason that that change happened last year was the federation was a very monolithic solution that didn't solve everyone's problems, and it was kind of difficult to support new use cases the way it was implemented. And so the decision was made to sort of broaden the scope of the SIG to be multi-cluster, which could encompass solutions other than federation. And kind of in addition to that, federation was sort of rebooted this year to be more modular, to be implemented in a way where bits and pieces could be used independent of one another, and it would make it easier for contributors to add features to support their use cases without having to know about everything, because it's less monolithic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, I see. Thank you.
So in terms of supporting like features like reporting, like aggregating status across clusters, I think that's definitely a valid multi-cluster use case. I think in the near term, there is a desire to experiment with different mechanisms of collecting and reporting status within federation. I'm not entirely sure that pods and nodes would be in the scope of federation, just because it's not something we're doing right now, but I think it's definitely within scope of multi-cluster. It's just sort of considering like documenting the use case. Like the typical way that's done in Kubernetes would be creating like a Google Doc that sort of outlines the rationale for what you're wanting to do and why. I believe there's actually there's a formal process within Kubernetes, like Kubernetes enhancement proposal. I'm not sure it has to be as heavyweight as that, though it might be good to sort of review that process for sort of how things are done in general. But the goal, I think, would be providing enough detail as to like what you want to do and why, so that people can provide feedback and sort of, I mean, and also if it's something other people will find useful, then maybe you can get other people to help. But the challenge is kind of like coming in and saying, I want this feature without providing the backstory. It makes it difficult for people to reason about whether it's something they want to and whether they want to contribute to implementation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank you, by the way. I mean, you've kind of come into the scene and like you've been implementing like Unjoin. We haven't had a lot of outside contribution at this point. It's been largely Red Hat and Huawei from a code perspective. So very much appreciate your contribution. I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of converging rather than diverging in terms of intention.
Yeah, glad to have.
Okay. And as per, I guess the multi-cluster meeting, I mean, you sent an email to the list. Were you specifically wanting the multi-cluster meeting to be more China-friendly or the Federation meeting to be more China-friendly? Because they're two separate meetings.
Yeah, so I hope that the multi-cluster meeting maybe, I'm not sure if we can reschedule it. But yeah, I think that I got the feedback that the proposal that maybe we can add another meeting, or we can use some arbitrary ways, such as 1 week in US time and another week in China time. But I'm not sure if we can do this, because in China we may not have enough people contributing to this project. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, but I guess we'll need to have some more sort of stakeholders chime in. If it's a federation meeting, it's sort of a smaller group of people, and I think that's more doable. The multi-cluster meeting is a little bit harder because there's contributors from Google that, I mean, a lot of the meetings are 9 a.m. or later Pacific, just because that's regular business hours for Google in the Pacific time zone.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how they feel about shifting that forward.
Yeah. Okay. So currently, we are hosting the code for multi-cluster and the federation in same repo in the Federation v2.
I mean, that's one of the repos. There's also kubemci, and there's also cluster registry. And I think those are the 3 primary development efforts being sponsored by the SIG at this point.
Yeah.
And chances are the future that Federation will probably spawn more repos. The goal is to try to break things up so it can be consumed independently. So the idea of having like one repo is kind of how Kube started, but I think there's a move away from that because it becomes difficult to scale.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of not seeing any Google folks, which means we don't really have. I mean, Ivan, you've been gone for a couple of weeks, I guess. Just trying to is there anything we can talk about? Is there anything anybody else wants to talk about?
Hey, Maru, it's Jonathan. I didn't have anything on mind that I wanted to talk about today, and I don't see any other Google folks here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, similarly, I didn't have anything specific to talk about. It looked like the agenda notes might have been a copy paste from the previous meeting where kubemci, cluster registry, and Federation v2 updates were given.
Yeah, I was just kind of assuming people would show up and have stuff to talk about. But if we don't, I mean, then we can maybe get our time back. Going once, going twice. Okay, y'all. I guess that's it. Thanks for joining, and have a nice day.
Take care, everyone.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.